My Lords, the data referred to does not show that an increasing number of small businesses in the UK are earning below the VAT threshold. It shows only the number of voluntarily VAT-registered businesses below the VAT registration threshold of £90,000 and does not include unregistered businesses. Of the 5.8 million businesses in the UK, 2.3 million are registered for VAT and 3.5 million are unregistered.
I thank the Minister for his reply, but we do have double trouble. First, an increasing number of registered small businesses are earning less than the VAT threshold of £90,000. And second, a big drop in those earning 90 to 150,000. In fact, a decline of 26,000 businesses in 1 year, 2025. Is this because some are deliberately suppressing their growth to avoid the additional tax and admin burden of complying with VAT? Or is it because higher employment costs and taxation have choked off their incentive to grow? Either way, it's surely time to reset this threshold.
I'm grateful to the Noble Lord for his question. I think it's neither of the things that he set out. As I've said, the data cited by the Noble Lord relates only to VAT-registered businesses. It does not include unregistered businesses, so I don't think it shows what the Noble Lord claims that it shows. If a business is already registered for VAT, it has no incentive to suppress turnover to avoid VAT because it's already charging VAT and would need to continue to do so even below the threshold. So why would they do what the Noble Lord is suggesting? I don't think that would make any sense. If the Noble Lord looks at a longer time series of this data, he'll also clearly see that it moves around significantly. So the conclusions he's trying to draw, I think, are very difficult to sustain.
Open his mind beyond the data of the question. There is no shortage of studies from very reputable organisations, the IMF, the OECD and others, that there is significant bunching around a threshold, and that's not a surprise. Where they don't agree is whether the brake on growth would be improved by raising the threshold or lowering the threshold. So can the Minister tell your Lordship's House that the Treasury is not going to succumb to a Goldilocks effect and conclude that because some say it should be higher and some say it should be lower, that they're happy to leave it where it is? Can the Minister assure us that there are sensitivity studies being run that look at where this threshold should be, because getting it right will open up more growth?
Well, I'm very happy to open my mind in response to the Noble Lord's question. The existing of bunching around the VAT threshold is well established and has been analysed by the Office for Budget Responsibility. The OBR has explained that where a registration threshold exists, some firms will cluster just below it to avoid the administrative and pricing consequences of entering the VAT system. That is, I think, an inevitable consequence and a recognised feature of a threshold-based tax system. He'll know that decisions on tax and thresholds are taken only at fiscal events. Raising the threshold further would reduce burdens for some firms, but it would also carry significant fiscal cost. The UK threshold is already high by international standards. The UK threshold of 90,000 compares to an average in OECD economies of 30,000. And it could be argued, of course, I think as the Noble Lord is doing, that lowering the threshold could support growth by reducing the distortions created by the cliff edge of the threshold. But the Government is also mindful of the impact this could have on small businesses.
Minister aware that according to official statistics, 99.18% of all British businesses are defined as small, that's 50 employees or less. It does sometimes seem, from the answers we get, that the Government hasn't quite understood this.
I fully understand that. I'm grateful to the Noble Lord for reminding me of it. Last year, the Government published its plan for small and medium-sized businesses, setting out support for smaller firms. We're partnering with industry to unlock productivity growth through the adoption of digital technologies. We're legislating to tackle late payments, which cost the UK economy £11 billion a year. We're launching a new business growth service to make it easier to access advice and support. We're making SMEs a national priority in our new procurement policy system, and we're expanding the UK export finance's capacity by £20 billion and creating a small export builder insurance product. So I can assure the Noble Lord we're very aware of the points that he raises.
Is the Government concerned about what seems to be the growth of cash-only businesses, which I think are not there for the customer's benefit, but for in some cases for the business, to avoid tax and other things?
Yes, absolutely. The government's very aware of the points that my noble friend raises, and HMRC have recently engaged in increased enforcement activity around exactly the points that he raises.
The Minister will be aware of the successful campaign Retailers Against VAT Abuse and I ran to ensure that online marketplaces are required to collect VAT on certain transactions involving non-UK established sellers. The problem is that the current system has been exploited by proxy directors, proxy companies, artificial fragmentation, and the chairman of the British Independent Retailers Association has written to the Exchequer, the Secretary of the Treasury, to ask for urgent consultation on this issue, which is probably costing HM Treasury £700 million a year. Can he use his influence in HM Treasury to ensure that urgent consultation takes place immediately with those retailers who signed that letter?
Yes, of course. I'm grateful for the noble lord for his campaigning work and raising this with me on a number of occasions. He knows that we are reviewing the online marketplace rules established under the previous government, and of course, as part of that review, those consultations will take place, and of course, I will bring it to my colleague's attention, the Exchequer Secretary, to make sure that he consults with the businesses that the noble lord mentions.
Okay. My Lords, for many small businesses, the VAT threshold is only one part of a much wider cumulative burden, and that includes rising national insurance contributions, business rates and minimum wage pressures, and the increasing complexity of employment regulation. This all hits enterprise, and it dampens the ambition and the animal spirits that we need to get this country growing. Does the noble lord the Minister therefore see a case for lifting this and other thresholds, and for exempting SMEs from some of the ever-growing burden of regulations that we're seeing? And if so, where would he start?
Well, I've previously, in a previous answer, discussed the issues surrounding changing the threshold. The noble lady may know that the Windsor Framework imposes an upper limit of just over £90,000 on the threshold in Northern Ireland, and the Windsor Framework is therefore relevant by extension to the government's decisions in Great Britain as well, so there are limitations as to what we can do. She talks about the other decisions this government has taken, which she has consistently opposed, for example, raising the minimum wage. But it's only because of these decisions that the Chancellor was able to tell Parliament yesterday, the day before, that living standards are now rising, having fallen under the previous government, and that by the next election people will be £1,000 a year better off.
My Lords, small businesses are the key driver for creating jobs and employment. But can the Minister confirm that unemployment is now 5.6% higher than during the COVID pandemic, and youth unemployment is 15.9%. What is going wrong? The Minister spent 18 months blaming the 20 billion black hole, blaming Liz Truss, blaming Boris, blaming everyone, and even blaming the Tories for repealing the Corn Laws. When is he actually going to take responsibility for what's going wrong?
Well, I think it's a little rich for the party opposite to ask anyone else to take responsibility after the 14 years that they inflicted on this country. Last week's labour market statistics show there are 381,000 more people in work since the start of 2025. Of course, there is more to do, but the updated forecast from the OBR this week shows that unemployment will peak later this year before falling for every remaining year of the Parliament, ending lower at the end of the Parliament than it was at the beginning, the rate that we inherited from his government.
It's the 322nd time that noble lords opposite have used the phrase 14 years. Will they please listen to Sir Tony Blair, who said this week that it is actually Labour's policies which are harming growth and undermining young people's job prospects? But I must ask, does the noble lord the Minister agree with Sir Keir Starmer, who said of the previous government, and I quote, "Lurching from crisis to crisis, and U-turn to U-turn to correct one error, even two, might make sense. But when they've notched up 12 U-turns and rising, the only conclusion is serial incompetence."
Well, that was a most enjoyable question from the noble lord. I'm grateful to him for giving me the opportunity to talk about the last government's 14 years in power. we had austerity followed by Brexit, followed by Liz Truss, and the growth record of the previous government was an absolute catastrophe. He'll know from the forecast presented to Parliament this week that growth has been increased next year and the year after. That's only possible because of the stability that we have brought about. Borrowing will be £18 billion lower over this Parliament. It will fall every year of the forecast, and it will be below the G7 average for the first time, something that the previous government didn't achieve in 14 years. It's only because of those decisions that we're seeing the stability and growth of this economy, decisions that the party opposite have opposed at every single turn.
My Lords, that concludes oral questions for today.